There was a truly unforgettable moment when Anthony Albanese delivered his very first speech at the United Nations. But overshadowing the day was a glaring absence that many found hard to ignore: the snub from Donald Trump. Here's something you might not know about the UN. When world leaders speak during debates, they are strictly timed. Once their allotted minutes are up, their microphones are cut off without warning, leaving even the most powerful figures in the world abruptly silenced in front of a massive audience of diplomats and politicians in New York. It's a dramatic reminder that no one is above the rules here. This was especially evident on Monday as countries took turns recognizing Palestine's statehood. Each leader was given just 5 minutes, but many struggled to finish on time, their voices barely audible in the vast General Assembly Hall. Some, undeterred, kept speaking even after their microphones were switched off. One memorable moment was when Angola's leader reached the podium only to realize he had no notes prepared. When Albanese stepped up about 10th in the lineup, he was clearly determined to avoid such a fate. He spoke with measured confidence, urging the international community to act compassionately toward the suffering people in Gaza and calling on Israel to cease hostilities. His speech was punctuated by applause when he announced that Australia now officially recognizes Palestine as a sovereign and independent state, a historic shift in foreign policy that Albanese and Foreign Minister Penny Wong had long championed. This wasn't just a political statement. It was the culmination of years of advocacy by the Labour Party, with Albanese himself having spoken on the issue for decades. Watching from the sidelines, Penny Wong and the Australian delegation were visibly aware of the significance of this moment. It marked a clear departure from previous Australian governments and aligned the country with a growing number of nations supporting Palestinian statehood. Before the session was formally opened by French President Emmanuel Macron, Albanese mingled with other world leaders, including Canada's Mark Carney, Spain's Pedro Sanchez, and UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres. Meanwhile, Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian Authority president, addressed the assembly via video link, his officials barred from attending in person due to visa denials by the White House. And here's the part most people miss. The seats reserved for the United States delegation were conspicuously empty during Albanese's speech. Donald Trump has openly rejected recognizing Palestine and has threatened retaliation against countries that break ranks with Israel. Trump was scheduled to arrive at the UN on Wednesday, Australian time, with expectations high that his speech would be filled with harsh rhetoric and criticism. While other world leaders continue to engage on the global stage, Trump's approach has been to turn inward and pick fights abroad, leaving the U.S. somewhat isolated. But even before Trump's arrival, his shadow loomed large over Albanese's visit. The White House press secretary confirmed that no one-on-one meeting between Trump and Albanese had been arranged, marking the second time in recent months that the Australian Prime Minister traveled to the U.S. without securing a private meeting with the president. This snub is sure to be seized upon by opposition parties and critics of the U.S.-Australia alliance, though the two leaders are expected to at least exchange handshakes at a leaders' reception on Wednesday night. The UN itself is a fascinating mix of bureaucracy and spectacle. Unexpected crowd control measures pop up. Seating arrangements reflect decades-old diplomatic compromises, and peacekeepers in their iconic sky blue helmets patrol the grounds. Albanese, who began his day with a stroll through Central Park, was particularly struck by Indonesia's President Prabowo Subianto's remarks at the Two-State Solution Conference. Prabowo, known for his tough persona, offered to send peacekeeping forces to Gaza and stated that Indonesia, the world's most populous Muslim nation, would recognize Israel if Israel recognized Palestine. This kind of conditional diplomacy adds layers of complexity to the peace process. Outside the UN, The streets were clogged with motorcades and law enforcement, while dozens of live TV crews lined the East River, all preparing for the chaos Trump's arrival would bring. Albanese's final engagement of the day was a bilateral meeting with his friend, French President Macron. The cramped French delegation office was buzzing with officials and media, eager to capture the moment as the two leaders shook hands. Their conversation covered pressing global issues like the Gaza conflict, the war in Ukraine, and Australia's ongoing efforts to secure hosting rights for the COP31 climate talks next year. Looking ahead, Albanese's major address to the General Assembly is scheduled for Thursday morning, Australian time, just hours after Trump's speech. Delivering this national statement is a tradition for Australian prime ministers. Every recent leader except Paul Keating has done so, and it represents a significant opportunity for Albanese to outline Australia's vision on the world stage. Unlike the tightly timed debates, this speech is not bound by a strict time limit, allowing Albanese to speak as long as he wishes without the microphone being cut off. This freedom could enable him to make a powerful, unhurried case for Australia's evolving foreign policy and its stance on some of the most contentious issues facing the international community today. But here's where it gets controversial. Will Albanese's recognition of Palestine and his approach to the Israel-Gaza conflict strain Australia's relationship with the U.S., especially under Trump's administration? And what does it mean for Australia's role in global diplomacy when the U.S., traditionally a close ally, appears to be turning inward and adopting a more confrontational stance? These questions are far from settled, and they invite a lively debate. What do you think? Should Australia prioritize its independent foreign policy decisions even if it risks friction with powerful allies? Or is maintaining strong ties with the U.S. more important, even if it means compromising on certain international issues? Share your thoughts below.